Hello and welcome to this FPL 10 players to avoid video with me, Holly Shand. This is a really important pre-season video. 12 months ago I recommended Ronaldo and Richarlison. Who have I got in store this time round? Help me get this video to 300 likes, and if you're new around here, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. First name I've got picked out then is Arsenal's Ben White, who comes in at 5.5 million this season. That's a jump in 1 million from his price ahead of the previous campaign. And to me, he's not as good an FPL asset as he was 12 months ago. We've got to compare him to the Arsenal centre-backs and Zinchenko. They all come in at 5 million, and I do not think that White is worth the extra 0.5 million outlay. We have to remember that Arteta likes to rotate his fullbacks. He often brings them off early, around the 60-minute mark, not always the right side of that 60-minute mark either. And we've also need to note that Arsenal have signed another right-back in this transfer window, Timber. So there's absolutely no guarantees that White will be nailed on once the season starts. The second name I've picked out is Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins. The main thing I don't like here is Aston Villa's fixtures for the start of the season. They've got 3 away games in their first 4, including trips to Newcastle and Liverpool. And because they've qualified for Europe this season, they are in the early stages of the Europa Conference League qualifying round, the midweek after Game Week 2 and Game Week 3. So it's a very congested start to the season for them. And right now, I just do not feel that Watkins justifies being the 3rd highest priced forward in the game after obviously Haaland and Kane. He is a player that will have time in our fantasy squads this season, but he is very much a form player. Once he hits that run of form and has a promising upcoming fixture, we will all own him, but right now he's one to avoid for Game Week 1. Another forward with decent backing to start the season is Brighton's Evan Ferguson, again in around 14% of teams, comes in at a nice price, 6 million, and Brighton obviously have the fixtures as well, but my biggest concern is rotation here. There's no guarantees that he's going to be the number 9 starting week in, week out for the Seagulls. We've got Welbeck there, we've got Undav, lots of competition for places. He's a young player as well, so he's one who's protected, particularly when he's had a few little injury niggles. And the thing that we saw last season was that he rarely played 90 minutes because of the options that De Zerbi had to lead his front line. So for me, I think when you're picking a forward in FPL, you kind of want ones that are the talisman of their team, that are on penalties, that play 90 minutes in every game, and you're not going to get that with Ferguson. So right now, he's an avoid. Now, Chelsea have very good fixtures to start the season, particularly after they've got that clash with Liverpool out of the way in Game Week 1. But I do not recommend buying Reece James in your FPL teams for the start of the season. He's currently in just under 20% of sides, but the big concern for me with him is his fitness. He rarely stays fit in FPL for longer than a couple of games. I think I saw somewhere that it was summer 2021, the last time he played 7 consecutive Premier League games. And, you know, rotation risks in FPL and injury-prone players, it just feels like booking in transfers down the line for me. So that's why I'm personally going to be avoiding him. I think Chilwell is a far better option on the opposite flank. I know James has got masses of upside. He's got the potential of getting double digits for attacking returns in a season, but it's just not worth the risk this early to go with a player so injury prone. And, you know, so many weeks he can get 0s and 1s. He will get an odd 15, 20 pointer in there, but not the consistency we need where we want a good start in FPL. Moving to Liverpool then, and Darwin Núñez is in around 6% of sides at the time of recording. He had a really disappointing debut season for Liverpool, and I expect that to continue. He is a player that has high shot volume, high XG, but he just fails to convert, and he's not a player that you want to own in FPL, because watching him on the pitch when you own him and he's missed his chances is just simply painful. He's not nailed for starts either. We've seen competition for places leading the line for Liverpool with Gakpo, Jota, Diaz. Liverpool strengthening in the window, which is only going to cause more competition for places. And when you look at the points per game potential of Liverpool attackers, all of those names that I've previously mentioned are all ahead of Núñez in terms of their output. So for me, he's an avoid. Sticking with Liverpool then, and new signing Alexis Mac Allister is also unfortunately an avoid. He was a great fantasy asset for us last season at Brighton, and I think that's why 16% of managers have currently brought him on board for game week 1, but he's not going to be the same player as at Liverpool as he was at Brighton. The thing that really saw him thrive at Brighton, well, two elements, was that a lot of the time he was playing number 10 and he was on penalties. That's not going to happen at Liverpool. He's going to be playing further back in the 6 role, which is just not as an attractive an option. And that set-piece involvement is also going to diminish. Salah is on penalties for Liverpool. I don't see that changing anytime soon, despite him missing 2 penalties towards the end of the previous campaign. He's a player that's fighting for the Golden Boot season after season. And Mac Allister, as the new boy, is going to be way down the pecking order. So do not be fooled by what you saw from him at Brighton last season. That form is not going to translate into his form at Liverpool. Moving to Manchester City, and a goalkeeper that's always seems to be heavily backed for game week 1, and it always confuses me, is Ederson. He's in about 15% of squads at the moment, comes in at 5.5 million. I mean, in general, I don't like spending big on a premium goalkeeper, and the thing that really holds Ederson back is that his save potential is so low, because Man City have so much possession, they rarely concede chances on their goal. So there's not many routes to points for Ederson. He's not going to get you bonus either. Basically, you need clean sheets. Now, if he was keeping 20 clean sheets in a season, it might be justified to have a nailed-on route into the City defence, but they only kept 12 clean sheets last season, and Ederson didn't even play 38 games either. We saw some rotation for him later in the season, so he's a player that I see in a lot of casual teams, but he is one that you ought to avoid. Kevin De Bruyne, unfortunately, is also on the avoid list. I think a lot of managers have heeded the orange flag. That means that he's just 5% owned right now, and it's because of that hamstring injury that saw him limp off in the Champions League final. It was a pretty big hamstring injury. It is threatening to keep him out of game week 1. He's not going to have had a full pre-season under his belt, and we have to bear in mind that Man City have got a little bit of a busier start to the season than most, because they've got the Community Shield a week before game week 1, and then in the midweek after game week 1 they've got the Super Cup final as well. You compare De Bruyne to other City midfielders, Foden and Grealish, coming in 3 million cheaper at 7.5 million. If you want to double up on Manchester City's attack for their good fixtures to start the season, give you a differential over Haaland, you're far better going there than investing big bucks in De Bruyne. Now, a move to Manchester United has seen Mason Mount's FPL stock increases in 9% of squads at the time of recording, heading into game week 1. But for me, I think he's another player you need to avoid. I think he's probably being highly bought because he's the most attractive Manchester United new signing for the season. And because Manchester United is such a well-supported club, he's going to be a player that Man United fans are wanting to get in their teams, but he's not going to be playing as high up the pitch as Bruno Fernandes or Marcus Rashford. I know both of those players are more expensive at 1.5 million and 2 million more, but I think they're absolutely justified. Manchester United have got really nice fixtures over the opening 3, including home games against Forest and Wolves. Do not waste the opportunity by filling up a Man United spot with Mount. You need to be spending on Rashford or Fernandes to really get the gains from those appealing fixtures. Completing the list of 10 is the most owned player, and it's Kieran Trippier. He's in 34% of squads, having been the highest scoring defender in the game last season, so you may wonder why I'm not recommending him. Now, one big thing to consider is Newcastle United's fixtures to start the season are not easy. In their opening 3 games, they face Manchester City away and Liverpool at home, so that's a big reason to put you off buying Trippier. Because he's so highly owned, if he does underperform in those opening few games, he will go down in price. I think there will be merit to buying Trippier as early as game week 5 or game week 6, but he could be cheaper in price by that point because of those price drops with the tricky start to the season. And when you compare him to his teammates, especially Botman and Burn, who are full 2 million cheaper, I'm not entirely convinced that Trippier is going to be worth it, certainly in the short term, but he will have his time in our FPL squads. Let me know in the comments then your biggest avoid to start the FPL season with. Who is not going anywhere near your Game Week 1 draft? And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel as well. I'd love to hit 20k before that Game Week 1 deadline. Thanks for watching. I'll be back very soon with another video.